Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tackling a really big question, one that's been around forever. How is forgiveness of sin even possible? We've got some fascinating source material, quite unique actually, that presents this, well, intricate framework.
Absolutely. And the sources, they look at it through a very specific lens, talking about a divine hierarchy and this sort of shifting dynamic of responsibility. It sounds complex, I know.
It does.
But the material actually offers a radically simplified view, kind of a model, while still saying, look, the full reality, it's way bigger than we creatures can really grasp.
Okay, right. So let's try to unpack this system then. Our mission for this deep dive, explore these specific mechanics our sources describe for how sin gets forgiven. We'll focus on what they call the first God and the second God.
Your primary creator and the intermediary figure, yeah.
And this very unusual idea of ownership of, well, everything. The core idea seems to be forgiveness happens because the second God substitutes, steps in for the sinner.
That's the heart of it, yes, substitution. But it's not just a simple swap. It's tied into this almost legal idea of who owns space-time at any given moment.
Okay, ownership of space-time, how does that work?
Well, the sources say, initially, before the second God did this emptying self thing...
Sort of gave up divine status to become a creature.
Exactly. Before that, space-time, our reality, it belonged to both the first and second gods. Co-ownership, you could say. But when the second God became a creature, that changed things. Space-time then became the first gods alone, temporarily.
Right, so the ownership literally shifts.
Yeah.
And that affects sin itself. This is where it gets really interesting, isn't it?
It really does, because, according to these sources, while space-time belongs solely to the first God, sin is defined very precisely. It's doing wrong against the first God, breaking those commandments, like loving one another.
So no first God in charge at that moment, no sin, in that specific sense.
That's the implication presented. Sin, as an offense against that specific divine authority, wouldn't exist if the first God wasn't the sole owner then.
Wow, okay, so the definition of sin isn't even fixed? What happens after that period then, after the crucifixion as the sources describe it?
It shifts again. The sources explain, post-crucifixion, the second God inherits space-time. And guess what?
Sin changes again.
Exactly. Sin then becomes an offense against the second God, who also commands love, commands adherence. The definition follows the owner.
That's quite a dynamic concept.
It is. And importantly, it starts to stress, look, this is a massive simplification for us. They say all three gods contain space-time and this divine ownership.
Yeah.
It's ultimately beyond what creatures can truly understand. But this model helps us grasp the forgiveness mechanism.
Okay, it's a simplified model, but still complex.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the first God's love. The sources say the first God loves only the second God. And what is in the second God? That sounds incredibly exclusive.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, space-time creatures like us on our own. The sources apparently say we have no inherent value or meaning to the first God, that countless spacetimes could be created or destroyed instantly.
That's the stark picture painted, yes. Which leads directly to your point. If creatures intrinsically lack value to the first God, how can forgiveness even be on the table?
Exactly. How can we be forgiven?
And the answer provided is, well, it's quite profound. No sacrifice from any creature, not even angels apparently, can satisfy the first God. Because creaturely existence in itself doesn't register as significant in that specific divine economy.
So nothing we do can bridge that gap.
Not directly with the first God, no. Only the sacrifice of the second God can reach the first God's heart, precisely because the first God's love is exclusively for the second God.
Ah, so the second God has to take on the creature's sin. That's the substitution piece again.
It's the linchpin. It's presented as the only way the first God allows space-time to continue existing once sin has entered it. The second God's intervention is essential.
It's a bit of a cosmic puzzle, really. This framework challenges our usual sense of inherent value. But okay, if that's the setup, what's the path for us, for creatures, to receive this love, this forgiveness?
Right, there is a path. The sources clarify the first God does love creatures, but it's a channeled love. It happens by drawing creatures into the second God.
Into the second God, how?
Through obedience. To receive the first God's love and avoid punishment, creatures must obey the second God. This isn't an afterthought. It's apparently part of the design of creation itself.
So the first God creates within the second God, completes creation through the second God.
Precisely because the first God intends for creatures to be loved, but through this specific mediated relationship.
Okay, so Wrapping this up then, what does this all mean for you listening to this? This deep dive reveals a framework where forgiveness isn't, just a simple pardon. It's this profound cosmic dance.
Yeah, a dance of ownership shifting, this incredibly focused divine love, and this absolutely crucial substitution, with the second God right at the center of it all.
It really places that intermediary role as fundamental.
Absolutely. And what's striking is this intricate design, where divine love for creation is expressed through that very specific relationship and sacrifice. It leaves us with something to think about, perhaps.
Go on.
Well, it makes you wonder, doesn't it? In what ways do we, as creatures, maybe limit our own understanding of these huge concepts? Sometimes we seek that direct line.
When maybe the path laid out is actually through an intermediary.
Exactly. When maybe the intended path, the only path, according to these sources, requires navigating through that relationship. Something to ponder.